We were hoping to catch up with you in person at the Adelaide conference, but sadly the COVID-19 pandemic means that that just won't be possible. But of course we are going ahead with a virtual conference and we're really looking forward to seeing you there. But before we get to the conference, I'm just wondering, how's Canada faring with the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, yeah, thanks, Merran, first of all, for this opportunity to talk to you. Nice to catch up with you. Look, it's been like, I think, many countries where the entire country has been sort of turned upside down and also mobilized, you know, in the response to the pandemic. I think we've done better than some countries and worse than others. So if you look at our numbers relative to, let's say, Australia or New Zealand, we look worse in terms of cases per million and deaths per million. If you compare us to many European countries and certainly the US, we've done a lot better. So, you know, there's some, we can take away some comfort, but also recognize that there are things that we perhaps could have done differently or done better or done earlier. You know, right now the numbers have gone down substantially across the country. Ontario and Quebec were the most heavily affected. The numbers here are now down to really very manageable numbers of new cases per day. The hospitals are basically pretty much empty, I would say, of COVID cases. We have a handful left, but very few, and they're starting to ramp up again with normal operations and procedures and care, which was largely, you know, shunted aside to provide or to create space for the potential COVID patients that didn't end up manifesting. But we're all very worried about a second wave. So, you know, we're trying to ensure that we do our best to prevent that from happening.
And has it been impacting on the work that you do at ICES?
Yeah, there's been a huge impact. So going back to mid-March when the, you know, it was declared a pandemic and a public health emergency was declared in Ontario, we pretty much overnight went to, you know, working on site with staff, taking occasional days to work from home, to working entirely, virtually 100% from home for all staff. And, you know, we have about 250 staff that were affected directly and needed to be immediately kitted out to work from home. So luckily, many already were working from home on a part-time basis, and so had the, you know, the equipment, the laptops, and so on necessary. But many didn't. And you know, our IT team and our staff did a great job of really getting us set up well. And I would have to say the transition has been relatively smooth to being, you know, essentially becoming a virtual institute. I think the challenge over the long term is that people feel quite isolated. And certainly for staff who have young children or perhaps older parents that they're caring for, it's a real challenge to be working from home and caring for kids when you have when they're not in school and when you can't, you know, when you can't have caregivers coming into the home as you would normally. So, you know, we're trying to support our staff in a variety of ways. But I think overall it's been a very interesting experiment. I mean, one that I don't think any of us would have liked to have run, or at least not under these circumstances. But having been put into this situation and forced to run the experiment, I think I can say that that it's been pretty successful.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right that there was an absolute imperative to work from home, and I don't think even if people were highly motivated, they ever would have been able to go to that extent of working from home on a voluntary basis. Mm-hmm. So it's certainly been a huge change. And in terms of the work that ICES is doing, have you been involved with COVID research, or is there any work that you're doing to help government respond?
Yeah, so again, there's been a huge amount of work that we become involved in very quickly around COVID-19. So on the one side, there's been analytics and reporting in support of the public health and Ministry of Health response to COVID-19. So we began work pretty much immediately to obtain faster access to COVID-19 testing data. And we were able, in a relatively short order, I mean, it's remarkable how when the chips are down, people start to work much more effectively together. So through partnership with many organizations across Ontario, we were able to begin to get the COVID-19 test result data on a daily feed. which we then linked and produced back to the Ministry of Health and Public Health authorities for daily reports on the patterns of COVID-19 testing, both positive and negative testing across Ontario. And what the value add that we could provide was to provide information on the individuals being tested with respect to their comorbidities, their demographics, their socioeconomic status, people experiencing homelessness, individuals living in congregate settings. So we could provide profiles of long-term care centers and retirement homes, outbreaks among those centers and so on. And there's been additional work, over the months to further refine those analyses. So there's been sort of that analytic work and reporting, which I think has been very important for the response. And then there's the research side, where there have been upwards of, I believe, around 60 different projects that are at various stages of evolution. Some completed, some just to receive funding and are underway. Some are, in the midst of being completed. And these are a combination of investigator-led projects looking at some of the fundamentals, fundamental questions around COVID-19, such as who's at risk, the determinants of adverse outcomes, and also other effects of COVID on cardiovascular outcomes, or the effects on other types of care that is not being provided. What are the adverse consequences of care that has been essentially delayed as a result of the COVID-19 epidemic. And then there are questions that are coming directly from knowledge users, so health system stakeholders who have questions for their own services that we're supporting analyses to answer.
Yes, so it sounds like ICES has been really well placed to support the government in Toronto and Ontario to make a big difference. So if we move on now to think about the IPDLN conference, and as you know, it's going to be a virtual conference this year. And of course, you're involved with a very successful IPDLN conference in Banff in 2018. And obviously the 2020 conference is going to be very different. And I'm wondering what you think might be the main opportunities from a virtual conference.
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm sad that I won't be traveling to visit you in Australia and see old friends and connect with not just Australian colleagues but colleagues from around the world. That's obviously one of the most enjoyable aspects of any conference, and IPDLN in particular was great from that perspective. But look, I think it is just like the the work from home experiment that we've all been thrust into as a result of the pandemic here at home. This is a terrific opportunity to experiment with a virtual conference format. And I think in particular for the IPDLN, which is attracting people from around the world, and where it can be difficult for some people to travel far a distance. It's expensive, it's time consuming and so on. And so there's an opportunity, I think, to really rethink what a conference like this looks like, to engage with people who might not otherwise attend or speak at a conference like this. And I think it really offers an opportunity to expand the kind of menu of offerings, let's say. I mean, I don't think that we're going to stop having in-person conferences once this pandemic sort of settles down, but I do think we're probably going to be having more virtual events like this conference. And so this is a great opportunity to experiment, to figure out how to do it right, what works well, what doesn't work so well, and still catch up with old friends. I think we're now getting pretty good at staying connected, even if we're still looking at each other on screens.
Yes, well, exactly. So, Michael, it's been really lovely to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you later in the year at the virtual conference. So, goodbye and stay safe.
Thanks, Merran. I'm delighted to talk to you, and very much looking forward to the virtual IPDLN. Bye for now.